What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this episode of Home Built Workshop. Today, we're going to use some yardsticks to make a bridge locating jig for building guitars. Now, I've seen several people using a jig similar to this. Mostly they've been made out of steel rulers, which I think is perfectly fine. They're nice and straight and very durable, but sometimes they can get a little bit expensive. So I tried to look for something that was a little bit more economical. I decided to give some yardsticks a try. They're super cheap, less than $1 in most cases. I think mine were about 98 cents. I'm going to start this project off using a couple of very inexpensive yardsticks. You can pick these up at the home centers. They're like 98 cents or something like that. Really inexpensive, and I really think it's going to work okay for this project. Now, these things are not that sturdy, and I'm not too concerned with that. All I want to do is have a very nice straight edge on the side. I think the fact that it bends and bows a little bit, I think that's going to be fine. So the first thing I'm going to do is very carefully joint the edges of these on my jointer. You could also do this using a hand plane or even carefully running it on your table saw. The whole goal is to make sure that you have two very nice straight edges. The way you get them straight really doesn't matter.
Now I can lay out where I'm going to cut some slots for the knobs. I'll cut those slots with a straight cutting bit in my router and an edge guide. This makes a huge mess, so I gotta take a minute to clean up. And I can just cut those pieces apart on the bandsaw.
Apparently I don't know how to lay out parts. That one's a 1/2 inch longer. I measured the end of the slot at 5 inches when I intended the whole length to be 5 inches. Yeah, it's fine. So now that I've got those little through holes drilled, these are going to be holes for some threaded knobs. Now I don't quite have enough thickness here for me to get some threaded inserts in. Now that was my original plan, just to put some threaded inserts in through the bottom and be able to thread some knobs down in. So I think I need to reinforce this a little bit so that I can thread it.
I'm going to cut some pieces of metal down that I can recess in the bottom of the yardsticks. Unfortunately, all I have to cut this with is a hacksaw.
This is gonna take a while. I'm gonna do this off camera to spare you the noise and the time. So now I've got all my little pieces sanded down. Now what I plan to do now is to actually mortise these in to the bottom of the yardstick. That's going to give me a little bit of material so that I can drill and tap for some threaded knobs. This little piece of metal is going to be just fine. It's going to be plenty of strength for me to tighten down the threaded knobs. Now to create this mortise, I'm just going to trace out the outline where I need each one. I'm using a bright Sharpie just so I can see it a little better. And then I'll just freehand route the mortise and square it up with a chisel. I gotta say, this is the first time I've ever mortised a yardstick. Now I'll just mix up some 5-minute epoxy and glue the metal plates in place. These T-track clamps also work really good as hold downs while this epoxy cures.
Now I'll just sand the underside nice and flat to even out the epoxy squeeze out. Now I can drill out the hole for the threaded knob. And I'll use a 1/4-20 tap to tap the holes in the metal plate.
Now that I have all the holes tapped, all I need are some knobs to tighten everything together. Now I could go out and buy some fancy knobs, but I'm doing this super cheap. I'm gonna make my own. I'm gonna use this dowel. I believe once used to be a broom handle and some threaded rod. We're gonna make up some knobs. I'll just cut down a few pieces of this dowel. And then I'll drill some holes as close as I can get to the center. It's kind of weird while I'm drilling this. All I'm getting really is this fine dust. Maybe because it's end grain. Then with some more 5-minute epoxy, I'll just epoxy in some pieces of the threaded rod. Once the epoxy's set up, I'll just lightly chuck this up in my drill, and I can really easily sand the corners to make it nice and smooth. And I believe that was the last step. Let's get this thing put together. There's not really a whole lot to putting this together. Just screwing my adjustable blocks in place and tightening everything down. So now, let's take a look at how this thing works, in case you're still wondering. I don't have a guitar body already in process, so I'm going to use a couple of templates, and hopefully you'll get the idea. After you've routed your neck pocket, you can install the neck. Then you can take the jig and tighten it down around the end of the neck. And now you have a guide that accurately represents where the bridge should go. The edges of the rulers will indicate where the edge of the neckline goes to make sure when you're positioning your bridge, you get everything in the right spot. Also, even though they're not exactly accurate, I think it's going to be helpful to have some measurements on here to give me a rough idea if I've got everything in the right spot for the scale length that I'm going for. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea of how this works, and also I hope you enjoyed this video. This was kind of a fun project. I gotta say, this is the first time I've ever done any machining and milling to a yardstick. Is that a first, maybe? I'm sure it can't be, right? But first for me. How about you? Have you ever used a yardstick for any sort of a project? Maybe not like this, but in general? Let me know down below. I'd be curious. Thanks a lot for watching this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and give it a big old thumbs up. I definitely will appreciate it. Down below, as always, links to my social media, my website, and my Patreon account. You'll find them down below. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Well, in case you can't tell, winter's back. I got the beanie, sweatshirt. It's like 30-something degrees, 32 degrees, I think, and we had a little bit of snow. I'm not ready for that yet. Huh, don't know how that happened. Shop safety, folks. Shop safety. Why does epoxy smell so bad?